Good evening, council members, staff, and members of the public. Today is Thursday, February 12th. It is 6 p.m., and I would like to call this meeting of the Municipal Council Special Council meeting to order and begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We do have regrets from Mayor McLean-Weil, who will not be able to join us this evening, but has assured me that she will be listening later this evening or tomorrow on our meeting tonight. Councillor Geelong is still off on medical leave, and Councillor Bell will be joining us shortly. With the special council meeting, we are going to begin with presentation from the municipal budget, and this is the first time that council has sat down to see the draft operating budget for 2026-2027. And our Director of Finance, Elena Wenzel, is going to lead us through this presentation. And following the presentation, there'll be an opportunity for public input, should anybody arise. And then we'll finish with council deliberation and direction to staff. So I would encourage council members to jot down questions, as we'll wait to the end of the presentation to ask questions to staff that might come up. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Wenzel to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Vino. Good evening, council members. It's my pleasure to introduce the draft operating budget for your review. I'd like to start with a quick review of the budget process. On November 25th, staff introduced the draft capital budget and presented updates on January 13th. Tonight, staff are introducing the operating budget, where council can identify areas where they want changes or request further information. We will have another review of both capital and operating draft budgets on March the 3rd. By March 24th, staff expect the major council directions will have been received, allowing time for final revisions and communications material to be prepared for the formal approval on March 31st. As your Director of Finance, I will present the process, parameters, and fundamentals of the municipal operating budget. Each director will present their budget overviews. This is the first opportunity for public input on the draft operating budget. Council is expected to receive the budget information, listen to public input, ask questions of staff for better understanding, and identify areas for further discussion, options, or analysis. Because the majority of municipal revenue is raised through property taxation, we look at assessment trends. Prior to the COVID pandemic, assessments were fairly flat, but because assessments are a reflection of the property market, they have increased and have seemed to peak in 24-25. At the same time, there have been more pressures placed on municipalities to provide enhanced services. This year, residential assessment values have increased 7.8% and commercial have increased 2.2%. For 89% of the properties in our municipality that are capped, the cap rate is set at 2.6% this year. Delving into the property assessment data details, there is an increase of 395 dwelling units, making it 15,946 dwelling units this year, and an increase of 242 taxable parcels to 31,283. The slide on assessment values comes from the PVSC's annual report for the District of Lunenburg. The top table shows provincial assessment totals and percentage changes for all municipalities in Nova Scotia. The provincial increase in taxable residential assessment is highlighted in green. It's 7.53%, and commercial is 6.7%, versus the municipality's increase of 5.48% for taxable residential and 2.28% for commercial. The taxable assessment growth in the District of Lunenburg is below the provincial average. The uniform assessment is a calculation that's performed by the province for all municipal units that includes taxable assessment for that unit and any grants in lieu of taxes paid to the municipality from provincial and federal governments. It is used to calculate mandatory costs like our contribution to the South Shore Regional Centre for Education and Property Valuation Services Corporation for assessment services. Many intermunicipal agreements also use the uniform assessment as one of the components for cost sharing. Mandatory expenditures are expenditures that the municipality has to pay in their transfers over to other levels of government, or for things like our RCMP or library. So 39% of our municipal budget goes to these mandatory expenditures, which are about 18.1 million this year. The budget increases our cost estimates, as we do not have confirmation of these costs yet. Staff are predicting that overall these costs will increase by 5.46%. De-transfer tax revenue is another revenue source of the municipality that is difficult. Well, this one's difficult to predict, as it relies on the sale of property. The municipality charges a 1.25% de-transfer tax on all property sales. The increasing amount of de-transfer tax collected is an indication that the real estate market is healthy. During the COVID pandemic, we had increased property sales in our regions, and sales have remained strong. Staff have budgeted conservatively, as there is uncertainty in the housing market sales. The 1.25% rate that is charged for de-transfer tax of the sale value, the 1.25% of sale value, has remained unchanged since 2010. Pressures on our discretionary expenditures include the cost of living on existing wages of 3.1%, which is per our personnel policy. Cost of living estimated increase on things like in our operating budget of operating costs and RCMP policing costs, as well as the LCLC costs. As well, there are new operating budget costs to meet council strategic priorities. We also make contributions to our reserves, which include placing moderate tax revenues aside as per the reserve strategy to help with these and future budget pressures. Contributions for amortization do not reflect the future replacement cost of our assets. If we look at the 2026 assessment roll that we received from the Property Valuation Services Corporation, the average residential dwelling taxable value is $254,890, making the average tax bill $2,065 at existing tax rates. The cap rate is set at 2.6%, so if tax rates remain unchanged, the average tax bill will increase by $54 a year. The municipality does have a targeted tax relief strategy. The property tax rebate is one way to help those homeowners that are struggling to pay their property tax bills. Proposed rebates based on household income thresholds of up to $61,860 will be $280, $490, and $700. The annual budget was revised to better reflect the cost of the program and represents 1.5 cents on our tax rate. The draft operating budget has been prepared using Council's 5 strategic priorities: communication and engagement, regional economic development, infrastructure upgrades, expansion and management, quality of life, and climate change action. Some of the priority projects included for Council consideration include the Community and Business Hub, regional economic development platforms, public transit, housing strategy implementation, municipal-wide land use planning, and community development. There's one change in the draft operating budget staff thought was worth noting. The extended producer responsibility recycling contract with Circular Materials has become a new revenue source for the district. The contract includes payment for the number of residential stops where waste is picked up, as well as funds for public education. Because Circular Materials owns the Blue Bags curbside, we no longer pay for recycling tipping fees at the South Shore Waste Solutions site. This will provide a stable revenue source to expand transit, operate the community hub, offset increased waste collection costs on the trucking contract, and support additional reserve transfers to address future infrastructure demands. We prepare a 5-year financial strategy that looks at our budgets over the next 5 years based on the existing costs that we have, and uses inflationary pressure increases to see where we will be. There is a small projected deficit in the upcoming years, and municipalities cannot budget for a deficit. Part of creating a balanced municipal budget is to look at future service commitments, including increasing costs and debt servicing. Municipal reserves can address small deficits in future years. It is important to note that this is a plan, and these projections will continue to change as revisions are made to both the operating and capital budgets. I'll now hand things over to Alex Demerick, who will be presenting the Administration Department and Protective Services budgets.
Thank you very much, Elena. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of what the department does, and then we'll get into some of the line items for the budget, and then talk about how those align with our strategic priorities. So the admin department manages some miscellaneous but core municipal functions. So we support council and the committees of council. The corporate services unit, which runs our front counter and our phone line, are housed in the admin department, and our communications and public engagement function is there as well. We're also responsible for managing the regional work that we do on accessibility, anti-racism, and our human resources service, which comes in through the MJSB. And then we have funds in our budget for things like all staff training, wellness, and professional development. And some of our time goes towards managing protective services, which is the next element of your budget. Finally, if there are special projects that don't fit well within a single department, we also get involved there. And as a result, occasionally collect boutique programs like our litter cleanup grant program. So this is a summary table, but if you would like to look at your budget document as you go through, the legislative and administration section starts on page 5 of 54 in your budget package. So if you want to just slide to the next slide there, Elena. So the budget for administrative or legislative services, which includes council, committees of council, our communications, government relations, as well as a $40,000 contingency, which is only used at the direct motion of council, comes to $1.1 million this year. We have a $1.5 million budget for the administration department, which includes the bulk of which is our personnel costs. So that's staff in the mayor and CAO's office, our clerk, grant coordinator, our corporate services positions. And this year we are seeking 2 summer positions. One is an annual one that we look for funding for to help with the front counter coverage. And then the second one is a special projects policy and research position. Similar to the work that we had done for our housing strategy, this year our focus will be more on communications, public engagement, as well as working on fleshing out council's discussion on community development. Election costs would also fall in this section of your budget. There is no election this year, and we do a smoothing process. So in non-election years, we take $50,000 from your general revenue and put it into an election reserve. On the election year, you then have $150,000 plus a small contribution from that year's annual or general operating funds to cover election costs. So that's why you're seeing $0 as your cost, but a $50,000 contribution to your reserves. And then we also have a section of your total administrative services budget. So this covers any municipal solicitor fees that are needed for council or the CAO's office. It also manages some corporate functions like our safety committee, special project funding, including the implementation of some housing study or housing strategy elements in the community development research, and then some shared office expenses like copiers and whatnot. In terms of alignment with your strategic priorities, your CAO, all of the CAO's office budget expenses are included in here, and he's pretty integral to a series of your strategic, high-level strategic projects. So these would be planning for regional growth, working on the public transit negotiations, working through the legislative requirements of the comprehensive land use planning project, and implementing our housing strategy. It's also worth noting our grant coordinator position is a half-time position, so it doesn't take up a full FTE. But once council adopts strategic priorities and starts looking at capital budgets, her work is directly informed by council's directions there. So it allows us to draw down money where we identify funders have similar priorities as us. Under the quality of life priority, the litter cleanup program, which I had mentioned, and also our regional accessibility and inclusion functions would fall in there. And you have identified as a whole strategic priority communications and public engagement, which is a primary responsibility for our department. As I mentioned, the elections reserve transfer, that's the only transfer that we have for this fiscal year. I believe previous years, this is also the section of your budget where we had the contribution to the hospital, but the fourth year of that contribution was last year, and so you're not seeing that transfer this year. So your net transfer is $50,000 from operating into reserves for elections. The next section of your budget is your protective services budget. Again, this is a bit of potpourri of various services, which we've grouped under the umbrella of protective services. Many of them are administered through contracts, and they all generally focus around safety and security of residents, providing supports, particularly in times of emergency. Next slide, please. So again, we do have a summary here in the presentation, but if you're interested in looking along in the sheets, this would be page 7 of 54. If you could switch over to the next slide. So fire services, the bulk of this is $5.5 million, which is collected on behalf of your fire departments, and going from the fire area rates, we collect them and then provide them to registered fire providers. So that's revenue in and also revenue out of $5.5 million. We also have just over $500,000 now in grants and services to fire departments. This is above and beyond your fire tax rate coming out of your general revenue. So it includes things like our fire service coordinator. It also includes a series of grants. Some of them are formula-based and generally increase by 2% per year at the request of your Fire and Emergency Services Committee. Others are, for example, we're working on the training proposal to increase the local training program. And so those would be more discretionary amounts in your budget, all contributing towards that $550,000. Of note, this year, we have made application to the Department of Natural Resources for federal provincial funding for Fire Smart initiatives. What we've proposed is a project that would see us hire a Fire Smart coordinator for 2 years. Their primary responsibility would be helping community groups that had interest in adopting Fire Smart practices to get assessments done and then implement those changes in their communities. We would be able to use that coordinator to make improvements to municipal properties, which I know had been a topic of discussion at previous council meetings. We have previously had Fire Smart coordinators do some assessment for us on waste sites. But this would be more along the community development model focused on helping community groups adopt it themselves. And it's important to note that while we have close to $200,000 in the budget, this is contingent on funding. We're hoping for a 75% grant, and the project wouldn't go forward if we don't receive the funding. Moving on to policing costs provided through contract with the Provincial Policing Service, which is the RCMP. We're estimating costs to be $4.9 million this year. So what we've done is applied a 6% estimated cost increase based on actuals rather than budget. Previous years we had done the cost increase based on budget. Last year that was insufficient. We believe that a 6% increase on our forecasted actual is actually going to be more in line with what the RCMP costs will be. Just to note, the Department of Justice hasn't given us information yet, so we're making educated guesses still. As soon as we get that information, we'll try and update you, but it may not happen before March 31st. It usually doesn't. Included in your protective services budget is also a $25,000 contribution to senior safety. There was some discussion about seeing if we could increase that so there was more staff available. No traction with other municipal units at this time. I believe there was a request from the senior safety group to the province to increase funding, which would be wonderful if that happened. And it is certainly on our radar that something we would like to see increase because of the benefits that are provided by that position. But at this time, that $25,000 is not an increase over last year's budget. Our REMO program in the Protective Services budget, there's an interesting thing happening here. We have an increase in gross cost, but we are receiving new provincial funding, which has been brought online in advance of the province implementing new standards. So we're seeing a higher gross cost. We've also gone through some governance reviews and changed the formula now. So there'll be a reduction in the net cost to MODL for REMO, and this is partly due to the provincial contribution, but also due to the change in formula, which means some of our smaller partners are now paying a more fair share for their use of that service. Also in the Protective Services budget, we put these items in our local emergency management services. We have the drought response programs here. There's a up to $500,000 contribution from reserves to fund the water financing program. So this is to help residents install improvements to their water supply in private homes, which is then repaid to the municipality. So this is a contribution that would eventually come back. We also have included $30,000 in our temporary water relief program budget. Historically, we've not budgeted that much. We normally have about $10,000 in that budget. Last year, as we all know, was a very challenging year in terms of water supply. The province did provide emergency management or emergency relief to municipalities who are running this kind of program, and so we were reimbursed our full costs, which ran over $50,000. I believe the full tally was just shy of $55,000. So we've budgeted $30,000, recognizing that last year was historically one of the driest seasons that Nova Scotia has ever seen. But if we have another year similar to that, the $30,000 might not be sufficient to allow unfettered access to that, which is how we've been running the program in the past. So just something to note there. That may be an instance where you might have to draw on your council contingency if we experience drought-like conditions again, because the province has made it very clear there'll be no financial support this coming year for that program. And then I believe the last note on the Protective Services budget is we have included $20,000 for proposed new grant for food banks. So that grant hasn't been established yet, but we did receive council direction to work on one. The $20,000 was a placeholder. It matches the request that was made by one of the food banks, although we expect that if we provide that funding, other food banks will make requests as well. So in terms of alignment with strategic priorities, a number of quality of life factors are affected by the services that you provide through your Protective Services budget. The Senior Safety Coordinator may be the best example of that, being able to reach out to residents who may be in vulnerable positions and help them, whether it's coordinating access to services, seeking additional supports, or helping to avoid fraud. It's a really excellent service that can have a significant impact on quality of life of some vulnerable residents. Fire departments, while they're part of your Protective Services budget, we've always acknowledged the critical role that they play in community building. In some of our communities, they are the last standing piece of community infrastructure, whether we're talking buildings or just networks of volunteers that come together. And so it's important to recognize that the support that council provides to fire departments really is an investment in quality of life. And a lot of our REMO work and local emergency management work not only speaks to quality of life, but directly addresses the impacts that our residents are facing in the face of climate change. And we're very excited if the climate if the natural resources grant comes through, to start implementing the fire services, Fire Smart Coordinator position. We think that it has a really wonderful alignment with council's focus on community development, and we know that there's interest in some of our communities to have resources to help them do this themselves. Finally, transfers for the protective services portion of your budget. We have annually been putting aside $100,000 from general revenue into a special reserve for a future regional training facility. So that is again included here in your reserve. And then we have the proposed transfer of up to $500,000 from your reserves into operating to run your water financing program should the demand be there for that. So that results in a net transfer of $400,000 from reserves to operating.
Thank you, Alex. Deputy Mayor and Council, I'll give a little brief overview of the Engineering and Public Works Department. Through development and maintenance of municipal infrastructure, the department provides both legislated and requested services and supports growth and development in the municipality. The department provides infrastructure services to the municipality's residents through management of our wastewater collection and treatment facilities in Cookville, Conqueror Bank, Hebville, and New Germany. And we also do the summer and winter maintenance of approximately 11 kilometers of roads, municipally owned roads, but they could be either graveled or asphalt surfaced. And also the management of the municipal road access, any permits that are asked for, and street lighting requests. We also look at the review of all proposed municipal, private, and public roads, road designs and sewer connections as per the municipal subdivision bylaw and municipal sewer bylaw. And also look after repair and any maintenance with this building, the Municipal Services Building, the building at the Mark, actually buildings, and also the CES building on Harold Wynot and the Wiles Lake Depot. And we also provide engineering support to other municipal departments. Our revenue and expenditures, I just sort of summarized them here. Our revenues, we get our revenues from street light area rates. The CES building, we rent it, so we get rental revenue, sewer area rates, hydrant charges, permit fees, some income from the EV chargers. We have a student grant this year for a summer student, which has been approved, and EPR recovery, which Elena had mentioned. This is the first year of the circular material revenue. And on the expenditure side, we have engineering services, and that covers our staffing, vehicle, and office expense. And lumped in that category is also center school, the maintenance costs there, and contract services. It includes the expenditures for this building, municipal services building, utilities, repairs and maintenance, waste removal, and contract services. Transportation, the maintenance of all municipal owned roads and sidewalks. We look after grading, dust suppression, snow clearing, salting, and ditching. And the CES building, utilities, repairs and maintenance, waste removal, and contract services. And our wastewater collection and treatment facilities, so staffing, utilities, chemicals, sludge removal, testing, and maintenance. On the revenue, this is an important new one and fairly substantial, the EPR contract trucking cost recovery. It's $3.65 per household per month, and there's over 15,000 households. And we also have an EPR contract for education and advertising of another $1.50 per household per year. And also revenue from sewer rates, and that we don't see a change. So that's increased in the revenue side. And in addition, we're adding just this one summer student. Historically, we've had a number of co-op students over the year to support the LaHave Straight Pipe project, but we haven't seen a need, but we do have an opportunity for an engineering summer student this year. And notable increases in our expenditures are the 9.3% increase in our GE All Trucking solid waste collection contract. Remember, that was awarded for a 7-year period, and this is the first year of the new contract, and it's a substantial 9.3% jump, and then it levels off for the next number of years. And this is also the first year, it's the first year of a full-time wastewater operator. We have added a third wastewater operator to facilitate and to support the construction of the Cookeville wastewater plant. And with that additional capacity, it's recommended that we had added another staff. So this is, the person's been in place for 9 months, but this will be the first year of a full year of that person. And decreases the J-Class road paving project. This isn't proceeding this year, so that's looking at our reserve transfers, looking to transfer $25,000 into municipal roads, and our sewer reserve $175,000. And also transferred from reserve is the Canada Community Building Fund for paving partnerships with the province to pave J-Class roads of $350,000. So a net transfer from reserves of $150,000. This is our draft budget summary. Just a few things you'll notice. The increase in garbage collection, it's about $158,500 increase. The CES building is up $18,500, and most of that's attributed to our cleaning contract, which actually is just going out to market now. We anticipate an increase there, and also insurance with our new provider. That building went up $8,000, so it's up. That's the two main categories, and most of those expenses are a flow through and billed directly to the tenant. Roads, we're looking at a 43% increase, a $43,000 increase, and it's a fairly tight. We've increased it about 3%, but we are looking at adding roads, additional gravel to a few municipal roads because there's not a lot of base there to grade. So we are looking at six roads, adding a little bit more gravel to, which is just over $27,000. And the wastewater treatment, we're looking at a decrease there, a decrease of $38,500. We really sharpened our pencils there. And with the Cookeville plant expansion, that'll be under a 1-year warranty. So a lot of repairs will be covered under warranty. We had also included in the tender a 1-year supply of chemicals. And with the new treatment, we anticipate less sludge to have to be hauled away. So that's a saving. And we're not doing much in the way of property maintenance with a construction site, so a little bit of saving there. Our strategic plan alignment under infrastructure upgrades, expansion and management, we have engineering services, our municipal services building, transportation, the CES building, and our wastewater facilities. To support regional economic development, we have engineering services, transportation, and of course our wastewater facility expansion, which will support commercial growth and residential growth. Quality of life, maintaining our municipal roads and sidewalks, as well as managing our street lights. And climate change, we manage and maintain the solar panel projects, both on this building as well as the Conqueror Bank wastewater treatment plant. We manage and maintain the EV chargers at this building. And the manage and maintain facilities for optimal energy efficiency at the CES building and this building, and also the circular materials. That concludes engineering.
Good evening. Planning and Development Services. You want to jump to the next slide? Just a reminder for what we do. So we look after the regional inspection services. So we provide services to not only MODL, but the town of Lunenburg, town of Bridgewater, and in the region of Queens. So that's building, fire inspection, and if they want, dangerous and sightly. So dangerous and sightly doesn't cover all areas of our partners. We also do planning policy development, so we have the minimum mandatory planning from the province, so that's covered by the department, as well as looking after the subdivision bylaw and any of the development applications that result in any of our land use bylaws. The department also looks after the Heritage Property Program. We manage the GIS system, so anytime you see any of the fancy maps, those come from the department. We work across all the other departments, helping them with their mapping needs. Our department also maintains the 911 civic address system. We look after the setting up the private road maintenance charges, and every year we make sure that, we review the budgets of we're up to now 35 private road associations that submit their fees or their budgets for the municipality to collect the fees on their behalf. We also look after the clean energy financing program, and we do the climate action planning for the municipality. I can't really see that slide, but yeah, I talk about all this in the next slide. So yeah, some of the highlights and changes. So we have $110,000 for the housing strategy implementation. We have a $90,000 grant to Lunenburg County Wheels. So that one, I think, was a $15,000 increase. My understanding is will be coming to present to council in the near future. Public transit, so fixed route, we have $600,000 in the operating, so this will be a transfer to the town of Bridgewater to purchase buses for the route. The Regional Inspection Services has a revenue of just over $268,000. The Clean Energy Financing Program is in there for $500,000. This budget does include an energy navigator. The private road maintenance, we have Atlantic Breezes. However, the next time you see this will be updated because you just approved two more, the Elmwood and Tanner Road. So those will be in your next version. But those private roads are mostly in and out, and the municipality collects a 5% administration fee, so you'll see a little extra revenue in the next version of this budget. The Hemlock Woolly Adelgid project is under the department as well, and there's $200,000. We've completed our inventories, and this is to move into the treatment phase. We have $53,000 for other local climate change action projects. We have just over $12,000 for municipal-wide planning engagements, so we'll be doing a second round. But once the document's in place, we also have $20,000 earmarked for awareness that, once a document gets in place, we'll, do make efforts to make sure people understand that the document's been adopted and how to go about applying for permits. Next slide. The alignment with the strategic priorities. A lot of the ones in the planning department overlap into all of them. So yeah, regional economic development, we were talking about housing strategy, the regional inspection services, public transit, municipal-wide planning, the climate projects, clean energy financing, and then a lot of the similar ones under the infrastructure upgrades and expansion, but also the energy navigator is in that section as well as the private road maintenance and improvement sections. Next slide. Quality of life, again, housing, private roads, public transit, municipal-wide planning, clean energy financing, the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid project, energy navigator, and on the communications and engagement, I think all of those also fall under those same projects. And the last one is the climate change. If you just want to jump to the last slide, Elena, please. Yeah, so climate change action, the public transit, of course, are other climate change projects, the Clean Energy Financing Program, and the Energy Navigator and the Hemlock Woolly Adulthood project. And the last slide is the transfer from reserves. So the $500,000 for the PACE program, or the Clean Energy Financing Program, is a transfer from reserves. We have $300,000 for public transit, so that net transfer from reserves is $800,000. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff, Deputy Mayor and Council. So economic development, we can run through that. As far as the economic development department goes, we are in year 3 of our 5-year economic development action plan. We continue to do developments within Osprey Village, working on affordable housing projects, the community hub with the commercial kitchen, cafe, boardroom, and event space. We have added programming space and a business hub upstairs, which more information will be coming in the next couple months. There's a typo in there. It should say 2026, 2027. It's my bad. On additional projects, basically that's the carryover of the Regional Economic Development Platform evaluation that is underway and will be finished next fiscal. And you'll see in our 5-year economic action plan, we have 6 areas of focus: promotion of Osprey Village, growth and diversity of the economy, investment readiness, workforce development, affordable housing, and supporting agriculture. So the snapshot of the department, there's really 2 main items on there. One is the community hub. That's primarily the fit up, and then the lease operating expense that will start in next fiscal, and then our project dollars, which is the main part of the community development project section. So just some highlights as far as personnel, the CPI increase for salaries. The main project that, again, we're working on is the community hub, which is well underway, and fit up is going to start on February 23rd, so we'll be well underway on that and finish that hopefully sometime during this summer. The additions are the fit-up cost for next fiscal, the Regional Economic Development Platform, and some increased awareness in marketing dollars. As far as our strategic priorities in alignment with those, regional economic development would be the platform that we're working on, Osprey Village, the business directory that we have, business awareness and marketing, agriculture days, community economic development grant. We've increased that this year. We had a lot of good uptake last year. And then business retention and expansion activities that we do in the department. As far as quality of life, assisting the folks at Welltide with the Collaborative Healthcare Center, the Community Hub, affordable housing, and the Food Hub feasibility study, which I'll remove that in the next update. As far as infrastructure, the Community Hub, Business Hub, and then communications engagements, that's the business awareness and marketing, investment attraction, regional economic development platform, the business directory, the business retention expansion work, and social media activities that we do. And then transfers from reserve, that's the transfer from reserves into the fit-up additions for the community hub. I think that's it for me. Other than a couple.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. So I'll give you just a little snapshot of a snapshot of what the Recreation Parks and Tourism Department does. As you're well aware, the department does implement a number of strategies, which is listed below, which is the active living, our open space strategy, our active transportation plan, and our park standards document. We deliver a number of programs and services that that help meets the needs from a recreation, parks, and tourism services perspective to our residents and visitors. Often we do try to partner with other entities in the delivery of recreation services. For example, we sometimes partner with our Lunenburg Queens Recreation Directors Association or with other municipal units or community groups to deliver. And one of our other core services that we provide is support to our volunteers and community groups. And we do this through a number of ways. So some of the services that we provide directly, we certainly provide programming directly in our various communities. I'm sure many of you are familiar with our quarterly program brochure that comes out. That certainly provides information to folks about what we are providing. We offer a number of events through the year. Ruth works diligently on marketing and supporting our tourism operators, and we are definitely in the business of provision of parks and trails and open space and supporting other groups that provides parks and trails and open spaces in the municipality. We very much function through a community development model, supporting our groups in various ways, to registering with Joint Registry of Stocks, to sitting down and helping groups fill out a grant application if that's needed. We also have a very robust grant program that we, once a year, do a grants workshop to provide information to folks and, of course, provide grant information to people all year round. Some of our special projects in this budget include the Hillside Cemetery Public Input Campaign, which you would remember that Sandra had came in and presented, so we're doing that campaign to see around the interest around the monument. We are planning another volunteer summit in November again this year. This would be the second one through our Project Volunteer, and we'll do that in partnership with our Lunenburg Queens counterparts. There'll be a full launch of our e-bike loan program this year, and we are entering into a pilot project with a number of municipalities across the South Shore with funding coming from the province of Nova Scotia that's going to help us collect some data around some of the parks to give us some data on usage, when they're using it, the time, who's using it, and things of that nature. So it's pilot, so it's not going to be at every park, but it will give us some data. So that's one of the special projects in the budget. The next slide is really the overview of the Recreation and Parks budget, and for full details, you could find them in page 15 or 16 in your document. The next few slides, I'll get into more specifics about the budget. So some noteworthy changes, so changes in expenses, and I know you've heard this from every director, is wage changes due to CPI, and there's also minimum wage increases, so we do hire summer students, so we have to make sure that we're in line with minimum wage increases. In administration and grants, you will see a decrease in this particular line item, and that's mainly due to us no longer administering the Active Smarter Kids program. We used to do that on behalf of the province when we had Britt, our Active Smarter Kid coordinator, but she's moved on to another position, so we no longer administer that. So that was $150,000 we were getting from the province, but it was really an in and out. We were getting it, and it was going out to pay, so in and out. Parks and recreation facilities, you'll see in that overall category, which includes the park staff, some CPI increases, and an increase in insurance by about $20,000. And I'm assuming that's because of our parks and our buildings at the Mark. Special capital trail requests. So every year the municipality does provide annual funding to assist the trail groups, but sometimes we get special requests from some of the trail groups to do special projects. And we do have 4 groups that are asking for some additional money. One is I have more details, so I'll go to my notes. The Adventure Trail is seeking $11,000 from the municipality. And this is to do repairs to various bridges, which are recommendations that are coming directly from their 2024 CBCL inspection report. There was a number of, the municipality worked getting a larger grant funding so that several trail groups could do bridge inspections. And so this is, you'll see in a couple of the requests, they're trying to respond to some of the recommendations in those inspections. The Adventure Trail Trail is looking to include barriers and curb replacement, regrade approaches, and replace ties in poor condition and replace some decking. The estimated cost to do some of these repairs is $22,000. They're asking for 50% from the municipality, which is $11,000. The Bull Run Trail has two capital projects that they're looking at moving forward with, and one is to repair Bridge 1, or the covered bridge in Headville, that you probably know better than Bridge 1. And again, this is a result of the bridge inspection report. The estimated cost for this particular project is $25,000. And then the second capital project they would like to proceed with is brush cutting 10 kilometers of their 27 kilometers of trail, and they're looking at doing this brush cutting capital project over the next 3 years. They did note that this has not been done in 15 years, so anybody that does use the trails, and you know that some of that brush over can play havoc sometimes. And the estimated cost for this project is $48,000, so the total cost for the Bull Run is $73,000, and they're asking $32,000 in total from MODL. And the LaHave River Trail, they have estimated cost of $78,831, and they're asking $15,000 from the municipality. This is a trail group that's had three missing links, I'll put it that, in their trail. These next two of the projects that I'm going to describe is going to help them fill two of those gaps, and then there'll only be one link that's missing in the LaHave River Trail. So they're looking for funds for the trail construction south of the Vino Road in Pinehurst and trail upgrade north of the Vino Road. And then the Dynamite Trail, they have an estimated cost of $40,000, and they're asking for $20,000, and this is really for tree clearing and trail surface repair. So just, we had similar requests from groups last year. Sometimes they make special requests, so that is reflected in the budget. Town of Lunenburg's request, we've had two requests from them. One is $60,000 for to help with the operations of their arena and their community center. $60,000 is in the budget. I just put for your information that $45,000 was awarded in last year's budget. I don't see the $150,000 there, but I know that they had asked for $150,000 as well for their ice plant repairs. That is in the budget as a special request, and we're recommending that if that's approved, it comes from the operating reserves. And the Zero Hunger Fund, last year we had granted $7,000. There's 12 schools in the municipality. The year before that, in 24-25, we had awarded, I think they hadn't awarded all of their money. They still had $5,000 left from their 12. So we didn't give them 12 last year. We said you have to award the other 5. So that's why the 7 and 5 makes up 12. But why I'm probably confusing you more than I'm helping you. But last year we awarded them 7. This year they're looking at the 12 schools again. And what they're hearing from the schools is that $1,000 is not enough. So they would like to receive $2,000 per school plus why they're asking for $24,000. Typically we've given them 12. Mahone Bay Center, this is an ongoing cost that we do include in our annual operating budget, and that's $10,000 to support that major recreation facility, community-based facility in Mahone Bay. At one point in time, council had made a motion that each year we provide an increase to the trail organizations, their annual funding by 10%. So this budget does reflect that, so they would be getting $706 per kilometer. As per direction of council, I have included the Sherbrooke Lake Water Monitoring Program at an estimated cost of $30,000, so that's reflected. And you'll likely recall that we had some presenters come from the Riverport area concerning the Riverport and Area Park, the park itself. They had asked council for $200,000, a portion of it to be used towards maintenance and a portion to be used for capital. In this year, you'll see $10,000 for operating, And of course, each year the budget gets approved, but the intent would be to include 10,000 for operating next year and then the following year. And the remaining $170,000 for capital would be reflected in your 5-year capital plan with, I think, 70,000 or 60,000 in this year's capital to go towards the park development. And then the Why Not Wind Farm Benefit Fund. This was, after the budget last year, Potentia, who is the company that manages the Why Not Wind project, approached us to see if we would help them administer their community fund program. So they need to give 1% of their profit back to the community. So we had agreed to do that on their behalf. We had roughly 15,000 last year, so we're budgeting 15,000 this year. The key with this is if we only get 10,000, we're only going to give 10,000 out. If we get 15,000, we'll give 15,000, and so on. So it's really an in and out, but they have definitely had, I would say, an increase in applications from just based on the fact that we're administering the program. So it's not a big pot of money, but it is another opportunity for community groups in our area to utilize the fund. So the major changes in our revenue, again, is we no longer administer the ASK program, so that was at 150,000, and then the Why Not Wind Farm Benefit Fund of 15,000. So how does the Recreation, Parks and Tourism budget align with our priorities? So with infrastructure upgrades, we continue to fund organizations with management agreements. So in our budget, and based on our management agreements with these groups, we do budget funding that will help groups that are managing property owned by the municipality, but the day-to-day services and operations of the parks are delivered by nonprofit groups. And some examples are like the Petite Riviere Community Park and the United Communities Marine Park, just two as examples. We continue to provide funds to the Nonprofit Trails Association. We are looking at doing an internal wayfinding park strategy, which is actually in our capital, but it does align with infrastructure. And of course, we are continuing to look at parks and accessibility upgrades. How it aligns with quality of life, there's a number of programs and services that do help, we hope it helps to address loneliness, reconnect our community, and improve social inclusion. We do have our Pro Kids and Pro Fund programs that for those that cannot financially afford to be able to participate in sport and recreation and cultural activities. Of course, all the programs that we do, ranging from seniors to youth, some programs we do charge, but for many they are free and usually family-oriented, so that definitely helps with quality of life and affordability. Our e-bike loan program, of course our grant program that supports so many community groups and volunteers as they provide services directly to our residents that impact quality of life. The events that we do, the tourism promotion, and of course the Project Volunteer that we started a couple of years ago through the Volunteer Summit, our volunteer spotlights. And Sandra does an excellent job for any group that's provided their email, giving them updates on training opportunities, grant opportunities, and for groups just to connect. And I did include swimming lessons and lifeguarding because I do think that I wanted to point it out specifically. It does contribute to quality of life. We do live around lakes and the ocean, and so it's very important for people to get these skills, and we primarily do that from our MUSH site. With regional economic development, how does it line? Again, the internal wayfinding for the parks, our events, the visitor information services provided through Ruth, through tourism. Our parks and accessibility upgrades, we're continuing to do that. Directly, our major events grant, which helps groups that are providing major events that are bringing people not just from our own community, but from across all over. And then our partnership with the South Shore Tourism Co-op. And community engagement, there's a number of ways that we make sure we keep our community informed, which again is our program brochure, number of social media posts, and keeping our website up to date. The volunteer recognition ceremony that we do each year, again, Project Volunteer. workshops, and the primary one being the grants workshop, and just meeting with community groups and meeting them where they need us to meet them. If I need to go to somebody's kitchen, I'll meet them in their kitchen. So just being available, and just the public engagement. For example, like with Wilds Lake, we'll be doing public engagement around that concept plan, and then just continuing to promote the things in our strategies and implementing those actions. And climate change action, our Saw Pit Wharf design, it was built right into the RFP around climate resiliency, and so we're definitely, when those changes are made, are looking at that. Our proposed active transportation policy and plan, and I put proposed because we get a little bit of a pre-screening. We're looking at bringing a policy in for council's consideration. Our e-bike loan program definitely is encouraging people to use a different mode of transportation other than the vehicle. Hopefully with this, people that can't afford will borrow to be able to get to some places, or somebody that's thinking about buying an e-bike but doesn't want to invest that $2,000 to borrow it and say, yeah, I need to make that investment, and then they'll choose that mode of transportation over a vehicle. And then just continuing the implementation of our various plans and working through the proposed parks evaluation criteria, because climate action is in one of those, and partnerships with conservation groups such as the Nova Scotia Nature Trust with the most recent agreement with Cape Lahave Island. And so just as my final slide is the transfers to reserves. So some time ago, council made a motion that we would take from the general tax rate $60,000 to be put into an open space reserve. So if we needed to buy land or make improvements to a park, or we would have funds in a reserve to do that. Transfers from reserves is from the Canada Community Building Fund, or better known as gas tax. That's where the $90,500 goes to the trail groups. And this is the $150,000 the town of Lunenburg has requested for their ice plant would be recommended from the operating reserves. So the net transfer from reserves from us is $180,500.
Thanks, Trudy. So we'll move on to the financial services draft operating budget. So financial services, our budget basics, we look after all the accounting things that happened here at the municipality, including your property taxation, our grants from provincial and federal governments in lieu, interest from bank investments and overdue taxes, including revenue from tax certificates and third-party tax information. On our expenditure side, there are personnel, wages, and benefits, our general office and equipment expenses, tax rebates and exemptions, general insurance, allowance for uncollectibles, as well as some of our shared services, including IT shared services, procurement, and our new privacy officer, waste site tipping fees and site monitoring, debt servicing, and our multipurpose facility budgets. As well, in the Finance Department budget, you'll see the mandatory expenditures for assessment services, the regional library, and the payments to the Social Regional Education Center for education, and reserve transfers for depreciation and capital infrastructure, interest that goes to specific reserves, and the LCLC reserve. So the financial summary pages are 17 and 18 for the finance budget. And our net expenditures are increasing from 17.9 million to 18.6 million, which is an increase of 3.54%. The LCLC multipurpose facility budget isn't passed yet by the board, but it is estimated at this time. Overall, the revenue in financial services is increasing about 1.9 million, so 4.97%. There's a taxable property increase of 2.3 million overall. It's offset a little bit by some lowering of bank interest, deposit interest, and other revenue, just based on market interest rates and expected capital infrastructure expenditures, because all the interest on our reserves and on our funds comes into that section of the operating budget. So our general expenditures, I said, are going down 4.2%, about 188,000. So there's some ups and downs in there. Some of the increases include wages and benefits for the CPI, as well as credit card and debit fees, and shared services like the privacy officer. Budget decreases include our tax rebate program. We're just reducing it based on actual usage now that we had a full year of this particular program in place, and we're not changing it. So we have a good idea of how many people will be using it. As well as IT special projects are going down because Laserfish's project to the cloud, the move to the cloud is complete. The tipping fees per the MGSB budget is going down $294,000. Our Region 6 grant is another, that should be up. Anyway, sorry, see a mistake on the slide. And uncollectible taxes of $57,000. Mandatory contributions, like I said before, education and assessment services, those are going up 5.2%. And our new shared service, we're looking for a privacy officer. It's a 50% shared position. We will be looking for pre-budget approval, so we'll have a good discussion on that when we bring that forward. As well, there are some reserve fund transactions in the financial services budget, including interest that goes to specific reserves, which are things like the waste site closure, the gas tax or the CCBF reserve, and there's the provincial grants that we received up front for the Cookville wastewater treatment plant and Osprey Village beautification upgrades. As well, any expired tax sale surplus funds, which are surpluses that have been held since the 2006 tax sale. If those are unclaimed, we have to put those in our capital reserve. We also collect monies for open space from development agreements that also have to go to a special open space capital reserve. There are some optional reserve transfers that we are making, including depreciation and future capital of $2.8 million. And the LCLC capital reserve, we are suggesting we move from $165,000 to $200,000 to help beef that up a little bit, as we know that there are future capital costs related to that facility, which gives us a net transfer to reserves of $3.3 million. Looking at council strategic plan alignment, communication and engagement, our tax bill customer portal is so close to being implemented. We're working on testing with a target date of April 2026. We also use the back of our tax bills to communicate programs and services. We use social media to communicate tax, our rebates, tax sales, tax billing dates. We ensure our rebate applications are circulated to local community support organizations. We use our 5-year financial strategy to help meet the infrastructure upgrades, expansion, and management strategic priority, because we determine the financial viability of future operating and capital needs. And finance staff do work with the public every day, and we're very conscious of taxpayer concerns about quality of life, affordability, and social inclusion. The budget continues to support that priority with the inflationary increase to the property tax rebate and income thresholds. This draft budget includes many projects and initiatives that support council's strategic plan. The draft budget is balanced. Staff have presented some options for council consideration, and council may also direct staff to make further revisions. And that is the end of our budget presentation for tonight.
Thank you to all the directors who brought forward this information for us tonight. This would normally be the time in the meeting that we would allow public input to take place. However, there's nobody in our gallery at this time, but I'd also like to take this opportunity to remind those who might be listening or watch this presentation later on that this is not the last chance that the operating budget will be brought forward. The next date will be March 3rd, and at that time, the operating and capital budget review will take place with any updates that come. So you have that opportunity to come forward, and you can also reach out to your council member or staff for more details in advance of that time. We are going to take a quick 5-minute break and come back, and it will be an opportunity for council to address staff on any questions or concerns with the presentation this evening. All right, we'll continue along in our meeting, and we will turn it over to council deliberation. And this is the opportunity for council members to ask staff any questions in relation to the operating budget. So I will open up the floor to begin that. So, Councillor Bell.
Ms. Winslow, in your report that you gave us, there was a figure of $636,000 and $300. Was that the increase per year? What was that figure? If you could go back to that slide, please. That, yes, estimated increase. So that increase, because that's almost how much we pay per month now. So, okay, that's a good chunk of change extra.
Oh, for the education increase?
I realize we have no choice on that, but thank you very much for that clarification.
Yes, certainly, that's what it is.
Councillor Brooks.
Thanks. This is a question for our engineering services. On the new contract with the GE Solid Waste, was there ever another bid, or do we just roll right over into the contract with those folks?
No, it went out to RFP, and the MGSB manages our waste contract for us, and there wasn't one other bid. And it's a 7-year contract, and it was awarded a year ago because you have to allow time for the equipment to be bought. So MGSB, like I say, manages all that for us.
Do we have any idea of what that increase is going to look like year over year for the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think after this year, I believe it's like just a little over 2%.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Oikel.
I have a couple of things. One thing I'm really glad to see is that our tax rate for residents and commercial is not changing. So that's really great. I'm glad to see that. So I was talking to the mayor, and she said this was the place to bring it up. So this is where I'm going to bring it up. And that is our Tuesday night council meetings. So in the budget, there is money allotted to pay for those meetings, correct?
Council in the community is an additional cost?
No, our council meetings on Tuesday nights.
Yep.
Second Tuesday of the month. There's money in the budget for next year to pay for that, correct?
No.
Oh, so we're not having it anymore after this year?
No, there's no additional cost in your budget. There are, most department budgets have some revenue, or have funds in there for overtime. You don't pay your directors overtime. So when you're hosting a evening council meeting in council chambers, there's no line item for you to say, well, we're going to not do that anymore and then therefore save X amount of dollars for
Okay,
doing
because I
that.
was, yeah, okay, so that was something that wasn't understood, or at least between me and the mayor, we.
Okay, the council in the community absolutely
That's
does
different.
cost extra
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we want to maintain the capabilities, so we need AV.
Right.
And so it's expensive, and then you also have smaller costs like your hall rentals and refreshments and that kind of
Okay.
thing.
All right, so then the idea of not having the council meetings on Tuesday nights, when would I bring that up? Would I do that in a Councilor Matters? In a future meeting?
Yep, you could certainly request that to be discussed at, for example, a policy and strategy committee meeting.
All right.
Yep.
All right, so I do have a couple other things, if I may, Chair? If I may?
Go ahead, sorry. I was conversing with
Okay.
when you would best bring that forward, and I understand it'd be under council matters at a council meeting.
Okay, great. So I'm wondering about the Pro Kids and Pro Fund money. I didn't see it specifically, how much money are we putting into that we're putting in?
I think it's 60,000 for Pro Kids. I just want to go and take a look.
Under your
And then
special?
And then 15,000, it would be under the overall, I think Elena has an overall line item, but, yeah. We're anticipating 20,000 in revenue, and we budgeted 80, so it'd be 60,000 from our budget, and then the 15,000 for Pro Fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And one more. So we have a lot of transfers going out. Are we still going to have a very healthy reserve for future years? Or are we, like, when do we start to have to borrow money for things? Or do you never borrow money for operational, right?
Yes, through to Councillor Oikel, that's correct. We can't borrow for operational requirements. Now, the five-year financial strategy and those reserves, we did show some slides at the capital budget stage. And on the 3rd of March, when we bring back the capital operating budgets, we'll also bring that five-year plan with the reserves in there to see how these decisions on the operating and capital budgets are going to affect your reserves. There's my opinion is that they're still going to be quite healthy. They may dip below some of the thresholds for a year or two as we do some big capital projects, but they look like they're going to still be in good position, and we are planning on doing a capital borrowing for the Cookville wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, thank you. Those were my questions. Thanks.
Well, if you think of any more, we'll probably do a couple rounds around the table to make sure all of our questions get answered. Councillor Smith.
I have two questions related to protective services. And the first, I would say I realized that last year was a very extreme year in terms of drought. But it is, concerning that whether or not we're going to be ready for it again by only putting 30K aside. I guess we can draw from reserves if it's needed. But I guess a related question to that is around the water financing program. And that water financing program, as a councillor, I've been speaking about it in terms of it being a program for financing new wells. And that's not all it is. There's a lot more to that program. And I have thought, if I don't know about that, then other people don't know about it as well. And some of the things that can be applied for in that program are about conserving water and water efficiency, which will help our residents if there is another drought and could reduce the reliance on some of the water coupon programs or coming and using our fill station. So I guess just to be thinking ahead to the next drought, how can we optimize that program and let people know that they can finance rain barrels, cisterns, other things that can help them be prepared for drought? Will that require more money for communications, or is that something that we can do without adding to operations?
Thank you for the excellent question and comments. You're absolutely right. The intention of the program was always to be broader than wells. Wells is, putting in a drilled well is by far the most common use of the financing program. But the bylaw was written purposely to allow for things like cistern systems. I would probably caution we'd have some, I'm not sure it'd be worth it for someone to do rain barrels. It's a pretty small function for us to be doing. But if it's a larger rain collection system that, for example, involved a cistern, that is absolutely eligible. We can tweak some communication materials. Clean Foundation, who does some of that, we can pass along those comments. We can also do some work in-house with our own communication staff for sure to try and get that information out. And I would say that your commentary is exactly correct. Part of our thinking around the $30,000 as opposed to the $55,000 that we spent this year. Number one, climate change is about extreme conditions becoming more frequent. So we know that we can't just say, well, last year was extreme and that won't happen again. We know that similar things may happen again. However, it was extreme amongst extremes. So we're not sure that that will happen. We have a more permanent fill station now. We're looking at alternatives there, and that wasn't in place for the full length of the drought this year. So again, we think there'll be a little less reliance on the coupon program. And in previous years, our budget was only $10,000. So $30,000 is a tripling of what historically had been our budget before we had that year. And our expectation is that the demand for that program should be declining as the homes that have those issues take advantage of the financing program, which lets them be more resilient and is a more permanent and comprehensive solution. So yeah, the financing program is our preference. We funded it to the extent that we think is prudent, and then the temporary relief program is for folks that for various reasons aren't ready to go to that program yet.
Do you have a supplement to that?
Well, it's an additional question around from Protective Services. Do you want me to hold that for later?
No,
or-
go ahead.
My second question around Protective Services is the shelter grants for the creation of new comfort centers. Is that new money? Is it a new program? And is it available to any buildings other than fire stations?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we encourage those not to be in fire stations where possible, because sometimes fire stations are also involved in first response. They're out there putting out the fires, and so they have less volunteers sometimes available to staff the comfort centers. So the Comfort Center grant program is specifically targeting putting backup power in those places, almost always used for electrical upgrades and generators. You certainly do not have to be a fire hall in order to be considered for those. You do have to agree to sign an MOU to be a comfort center if we provide the funding for that. The MOUs are not onerous. It just provides us with enough information, and basically you're agreeing to communicate with the municipality and REMO when you decide to activate, so that we're able to publicize that to our residents. The grant is a program that's been in place for over 15 years. Originally, there was some federal funding. I believe it was federal. It's called the JEP program. Councillor Bell might remember that. So it's been in existence for quite some time with our municipality, at least since before COVID. We've put 14,000 and adjusted it so that that would cover 2 projects, because there was some mathematical formulas in the old one that sometimes ended up with, sorry, I don't need to get into the history of the old grant. 2 grants, there's enough money in there for 2 halls. Last year we didn't get enough applications to spend both of those. We may get a late application in yet, but time's running out for them to do that work. So if you have halls in your area that are considering getting backup power to be a comfort center, encourage them to fill out the application. It's available on our website.
While you're still in the hot seat, Alex, the mayor had provided some comments and questions that she wanted to bring forward this evening, and she does have one in the admin department. And it plays on to what Councillor Smith had said, in that given that the province will not support a water couponing program for 2026, have we budgeted sufficient funds of 30K going forward? And should we be looking at an increased number, knowing there's no funds coming from the province?
So I've put the $30,000 figure in there. I've gone over some of that background. Historically, it has been at 10,000, and we are hopeful that as more people take advantage of the financing program, they're not reliant on the temporary relief program. So 30,000 is a number I've recommended. The purpose of tonight, though, is to present the draft budget. So if council would rather add more cushion and have unspent funds at the end of the year, we can certainly make that adjustment for the next time we come around. If we do get into that type of question, though, we'd love to see a show of hands so that we're clear on the direction of the majority of council.
Okay, I'll straight out and, Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, this is a general question about it's our first year priorities in terms of communication. Councillor Smith touched on it just a little bit with messaging to the community about this dry well program. And when I think about us spending money to do council in the community and some of the turnouts that we've had, I'm just asking everyone around the table if we feel like we are adequately funding our communication and if we need to have a separate moment of that in policy and strategy to be sure that if we're spending this money that we're making it as effective as possible by really doing that communication bit to our constituents. We have our new communication director in here tonight. I hope that we all have more of an opportunity this year to look a little bit more about the app, which I think the first blush version of it is really cool. I think more of the community could know more about it, but now that we're moving more of these things into place, I'd really like to know from people. My concern is that maybe we have not funded it enough, but perhaps, Alex, you'd like to talk about that, but certainly would like to hear what other people think, because I just want to make sure we connect those dots with that piece.
Does anybody else want to comment on the 30K that's in the budget for the water monitoring? Or sorry, not water monitoring. Ooh, definitely not. The water couponing program. Councillor Reinhardt.
Yeah, I'd just like to add my support for, maybe this is too big, but I do think it's important to incorporate some more conservation-minded thinking into our water relief efforts. Very supportive of what we do now. You know, financing wells and other, you know, cisterns and the temporary water relief coupons, but they don't, they're not really coming from a conservation standpoint. So things like rain barrels, I think, are really one simple, you know, low-cost thing that we could maybe promote. So all that to say, I think it may need to be increased, what is in the budget, but if we could also increase the scope of what that is covering a little bit, I think that would be good.
Okay. I don't see any other direct hands, but I guess I'll pose the question. If you would like to see an increase above the 30K, I'm not putting a number on it yet, just if you would like to see an increase to this number, please indicate by raising your hand. You always do this. I always expect that, Councillor Moore.
Yeah, okay. So if we do increase it, that's still going to keep our tax rate the same because there's a contingency there, right? I mean, I know the capital budget is coming.
Yeah, we're talking about a difference between, historically was a $10,000 budget. Last year with provincial funding, our gross cost was $55,000, but our net cost was $0, but the provinces told us they will not do that again. So we're talking about tripling our historical budget to $30,000. There's been some concern that that's not large enough. Even if we were to expand it up to the $55,000, we would come back with adjustments. It would not come close to affecting a tax rate decision or canceling a capital project.
Okay, thank you.
All the hands are going up now, but for questions. Councillor Burns, and then Councillor Oikel, and then Councillor Brooks.
This is a question with a genuine question and process here. We have 30,000 in the budget for now. Obviously, we're looking at something that was an extraordinary circumstance, and we're anticipating and trying to pull out our crystal ball about what level of extraordinary circumstance we're going to face this year. If this is something in which we end up needing to put more money in to face an additional unforeseen circumstance, Council does have the discretion to spend more money at that time. It's not like we are not locked into this. So what we're saying is this is our best laid plan for what we think we may need based on what has happened recently. But like whether we up that number tonight or not does not change our ability to spend more on a program to meet a need in the future, does it?
And for those that might be listening, the answer to that from staff was yes, there was some head nodding there.
Thank you.
Councillor Oikel.
Councillor Burns said what I was going to say.
Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the same thing. I think we want flexibility, but we may go back to $10,000. You know, maybe we'll have a particularly rainy year next year because we don't know. So the flexibility is what I would certainly vote for before any dollar figure, because we don't want to paint ourselves into a corner. We definitely want to be responsive to our community, but let's be prudent and not pretend we know what's going to happen.
With that, I'm seeing nods around the table to go ahead with just leaving it at 30, which is an increase from previous 10. And if the situation comes as it did last year, we'll bring it forward to council and adjust as we need to at that time.
Thank you. That was a wonderful summary, Madam Chair. I do have a little more information on the communications budget. I didn't spend a lot of time focusing on it, but it was a topic of large discussion the previous year. So we have it in a series of different accounts. We have 15,000 budgeted for advertisements. We have 20,000 in our public participation in meetings budget. This is actually a decrease from previous years, last year, but that's only because we had extra money for the land use planning project in that budget. Municipal matters is no change from last year, 35,000, and we have the fire services newsletter, which remains at 12,000. The recruitment and retention newsletter. We also have just over 100,000 available for communication projects and implementation of the communication strategy actions. So this involves, as we spoke about, there are some graphic design work. We've done we have a roster of services, freelance folks, those social media content creators that we source through our procurement policy and had been using them to avoid having to create another full-time equivalency position, but to get more communications work done. So those funds remain untouched. I shouldn't say untouched. They were used through this year's budget. The same amount is in this year's, the proposed budget. Because we did some one-time work around branding, we're able to reduce a little bit of the public participation budget, and the app has been designed and is now issued. We are showing about $30,000 less in our communications total envelope, but that should get you the same or even slightly more in terms of actual content that we'll be producing for you over the year. I think that Councillor Brooks has also asked a question not just about budget, but on efficacy. And I do think that there's some value, not in the budget process, but coming back, particularly once we give Sherry a little chance to get her feet under her, to look at over the past year. All right, we did 2 or 3 council in the community meetings. We have all the stats on how our engagement is happening on the Engage site. We know the number of public engagement events we held. So we can bring you some raw statistics and we can give you some information and thoughts about where we might adjust our efforts. It might also sync nicely with your question about council meeting times, but doesn't have to. So I thank you for the question. I hope that that provided a little more information.
It does, Alex, thank you. And I hope we do have, set aside some time and you will give us some feedback and when Sherry gets up to speed and we have a good little healthy conversation about, what the most effective thing is, because I think some folks around the table have some different ideas and it would be great to hear what everyone had to contribute to that. Thanks, Alex.
Councillor Smith.
Just on the communication front, can you remind us how much the council and community budget is and how much we're proposing to spend next year on that project.
I do not remember how many we had slated to happen. Each council and the community meeting costs between $6,000 and $8,000 to account for all the AV and all the other costs that go along with it, not including staff and councilor time. And I'm not actually sure I remember if we'd done 2 in the last, you know what?
One.
Oh, is that what the whispering was about when I spoke? I misspoke on the number that we'd completed. Okay, yep.
So that is one element of our communications budget that I would really like to see us look at it again, because I don't, 6,000 to 8,000 for council and community does not feel like it's, we're really getting our money's worth for that. It just feels like too much. The one session that we did, I think there were 3 members of the public. I think if we regularly, here we are in a central location and we have no one in our gallery for public input, I don't know how effective it is for us to spend all that money going out into the community. So I would really like to see us revisit that. Our communication could be money could be put towards something much more impactful.
So the way that the accounts are structured, unless I'm misunderstanding and council is actually looking to reduce the communication budget, you would like to ensure that our efforts are most appropriately directed. So all of that would probably fit better in a policy and strategy meeting where we brought you some statistics and you could see and you could give some directions on how you wanted to adjust, but keeping the same funding amounts there, so that the budget amount doesn't commit you to doing a certain number of those council and the community meetings. And it's entirely possible that you could decide to do a less formal thing than an actual council meeting, which wouldn't have the same AV requirements, which is the main cost driver.
I think it's good that we heard that, because I as well thought it was a budgeted specific line item, not part of a bigger communications pod. And I agree with Councillor Smith, for the amount of money spent on doing council in the community, that is a lot of money that could go towards food banks, water monitoring in the school, little things that really could make a difference. So bringing that back to Policy and Strategy Committee, I think would be an important part of that. Okay. Councillor Burns.
Another question on overall process that I think will be great for me to know, but also important for residents who may be looking over this as a plan. My understanding is the budget is our best laid plans for the year and what we think they may cost, but throughout the year, if we decide to make changes to those best laid plans, we're not locked in because we budgeted it for them tonight. And conversely, if new things arise that we need to respond to, we still have the authority as a council to spend money. It is just a deviation from the plan we're approving tonight, correct?
Yes, through to Councillor Burns, one of the reasons why you do maintain healthy reserves is so that you can respond to emergencies when they arise. So having that part of that is part of your flexibility, is to have, monies in reserves, that so you're not looking to change tax rates or revenue requirements to address certain expenses. Now perhaps there'll be other expenses that you don't spend money on that, you may have the room in the budget. We just, we don't know because it transfers over, but there, certainly that's part of the reason why we have such a robust reserves strategy, so that you can respond to those emergencies and feel confident that you have the funds available for those.
I have 2 questions to bring forward that fall under the Finance Department. The first one being, are we fully recovering the credit card expenses now that we're offering this service? And where do they show up? Is it miscellaneous revenue or another category?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the credit card fees, we haven't fully analyzed that account yet because the year isn't over. So we did increase as a line item, and I think it's in miscellaneous revenue, actually, in the finance department, that those fees are, there's increased fee revenue and there's also increased costs. So if council, we did tell council that once we had, some experience under our belt, that we would come back and look at those fees to see if they're recovering what we expected them to recover. So we just set a budget and we'll do a full analysis and bring that back, probably at a policy and strategy committee as well, maybe, after year end, and so that if we have to if staff think we need to make an adjustment to the fee, we can look at it at that time.
And the other question I think would fall under finance or maybe engineering is regarding the CES facility. Do we recover all expenses through our rental agreement on this building? And are there any capital costs that are pending or foreseeable for this building?
I can start, certainly, and Mr. Pace, Steve, you can jump in if you want. But so the CES agreement is written in such a way that we get rental for the building and recover all the costs. So it's actually a net revenue to the municipality to have that building, because we get the rental fees and they pay almost all the costs for maintaining that building. Now, the capital costs in the agreement, they're responsible for those. So if there's capital upgrades that need to happen, it would be on them to pay for them. That's my understanding.
Yes, no, just comment that we did do a parking lot upgrade there, but the building is getting to the age of, it's going to require some capital upgrades, particularly to the HVAC system in particular. We had an energy audit done there, and that would be one of the highest priorities.
Councillor Hubley.
Question on that. So are we going to be responsible for the HVAC in that building? The cost? We don't know yet.
I think through to Councillor Hubley, the agreement is written that they are responsible for the cost, but we'd have to negotiate with them, all the upgrades. So if we went to them and said, we've done an HVAC evaluation of the building, we think that these upgrades need to be done to improve the energy efficiency of the building, which in turn should lower your cost because you're paying for the electricity, then we could have that discussion with them to see if they'll agree to pay for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I understand.
Anyone else with a question at this time? I still think Councillor Reinhardt.
This is about protective services. Animal control, that's a shared service, I believe, right? We share the cost with other municipalities?
We contract it from the District of Chester, and the District of Chester procures it with a third-party provider. So it's a form of shared service.
Okay. So what is the total budget for that cost? Because the 44,000, that's our portion, right? So I'm just wondering what the total cost is. And generally, not every single line item, but what does that include?
So that is the fixed fee in the contract with the third-party provider. I don't know what Chester's costs are, although I could find that information for you and share that with council. And that covers our full animal control services. So the animal control officer responds to any complaints about animals, works with our staff when has to issue letters or take enforcement action under the dog bylaw, and that covers all of those costs, as well as if he has to, the officer has to impound or collect animals and keep them, it also covers those costs. Yep.
Councillor Bell.
With that comment, I do think that the services that we are getting from Chester are good. I haven't heard complaints. And when I go back a few years when we were doing it on our own, there was the odd complaint. So from a history point of view, I think where we are now is very good. But if you want to break down the costs, that's above my pay scale. But I am saying that I think the service right now is better than what we had.
Counselor Smith.
I have a couple questions on economic development. One is about, one's a larger picture question about the economic action plan. That's kind of the context for some of this work. Is there like a reporting schedule around that plan? Because we're in the third year of it. But I wouldn't say I know how the, like, all the different pieces are progressing or not, or if we're changing track. Do we get reporting on that 5-year action plan?
No, there's no structured reporting on that particular plan, but if council has a request for us to come back and do an update on where we're at, we're happy to do that.
And I'm just putting it out there, I would appreciate that, just so that I had more of a holistic view of the economic action plan and how it's proceeding. And maybe within that, the Osprey Village marketing plan, we have 20,000 the last couple of years. Is that kind of money that we're putting out every year in perpetuity, or does that plan end at some point?
Right now, it's general, and most of it's been focused on the community business hub to raise awareness of that. And as we move into opening it, as far as what can be rented and rentable items in that, we will use that for that purpose. All budgets can end at any year. You can take it out next year, take it out now if you want, but there's nothing in perpetuity.
And two other questions for economic development. What are the operating costs for the Well-Tide building?
We don't honestly have a good sense of that right now. We met with the Well-Tide folks because they do more Lindsay and RCS construction because they do a lot of these buildings and we don't. What they base their operating cost on in buildings of this size are about $4.68 per square foot. So we based our operating expense based on their previous knowledge and expertise. We won't have a good sense until we get into year one and know if we're on par with that, or we're a little ahead or a little behind, but we're basing it roughly on $5 a square foot, which is, in my understanding, industry standard for that type of building.
That makes sense. And the other question, which is probably a line item, what is included as community development projects in economic development, the 178?
Yep, those are typically our program dollars that we do. I will say the lion's share of that this particular year, and why it's a little heavy, is the Regional Economic Development Platform, because it ended up going over 2 years. It's high because we're the lead municipal unit on that, so we pay the bills. You'll notice in our revenue section that there's offsetting revenue from the province and our other municipal units. So it's not the full amount of that. So there's like 70,000 in there for the study. Our portion of that is about 10. So it's offset it with revenue that's coming in. We did put some additional dollars in for next year under regional economic development. We don't know what the status or what the results will be from the platform. If it suggests that we do something else, we wanted to make sure we had dollars in there to be able to facilitate that with our partners. The other ones are our standard one, our community economic development grant that we have, our general marketing that we do, our agriculture marketing we do, which is really Ag Days, which is in year 12, some things we do with the website, and then some investment attraction. So it's our general dollars, but the biggest is the platform.
I think I seen a hand over here, but then it went down really quick. Nope. Any more hands over here? Counselor Smith.
Sorry. More questions. This one is for planning. LCAP projects. That budget, last year, you know, there was a big discussion around the LCAP and lots of little projects that maybe we were going to put aside. This year, there's more money put aside for LCAP projects, and just wonder what has been kind of slated for that.
Yeah, so your, before Christmas, your manager of climate and sustainability gave a presentation to council. Council hasn't made a decision on that, so he'll be coming back to council for council to decide what projects that we want to do. Right now, we've put in a placeholder in that budget, so if you want to do what some of those projects, that we'll have some funds there to look at that.
And is the, I saw on one of your slides, the Energy Navigator.
Yes.
Is that included in this LCAP?
In that?
Would it be in that LCAP? Is there a
Not the
cost for
other-
that, or?
No, so that would be, we're looking at an internal, like, so it's already in our budget, like it's a shift internally to focus on energy navigation.
So will that be coming back to us as well in the future? Because I feel like we haven't talked a lot about the navigator position.
Yeah, what would have to come back is, so that would be like a partnership with the town of Bridgewater, so we would need we're currently working on an agreement, so that agreement will need to come to council, and council would need to approve that. But if you implement the energy navigator position, it would be an internal shift. And
Is
there
there
would be, sorry,
go
there
ahead.
would be revenue from the town of Bridgewater on that as well. So it would be a 50-50 cost share.
Can you speak a little more on the role of the Energy Navigator? Like what to expect from that position or role?
Yeah,
From somebody
so-
who has no information on it?
Yeah, so I know, like we've talked, our staff have talked to counselors, like sometimes they'll reach out to either myself or our other climate staff about programs that are available, whether they're provincial programs, municipal program, or a federal program. So there's a lot of, like, if somebody's wants to replace their oil-fired furnace, well, where can they get funding for that, right? Like, they want to do a heat pump, there's programs. So if you want to do solar, like, it's overwhelming for the general folks. So this Energy Navigator would specialize in understanding, like, what are all the programs out there? So then when somebody, if you want to put solar on your house, or you want to replace your furnace with a heat pump, you can come have a conversation with the Energy Navigator, and that person would basically help walk you through that program. You know, if you have any questions, or if you run into a problem, because sometimes, like, you'll hit a roadblock, and you will maybe feel overwhelmed, that you don't know where to go, that something just doesn't seem right. So you'll be able to come to the Energy Navigator, who will have contacts at whether it's CMHC, you know, Efficiency One, whatever, you know, Nova Scotia Power, whatever program that you're in. So if you come across a roadblock or a barrier, they have a direct line to this program staff there that can basically help knock those barriers out of the way to make it more smooth for our residents, for when they want to come and do a program, that it makes it less complex for the average person, because there's a lot of programs and there's a lot of, like, does this one apply or does that one apply? And people get confused. So this would help shed some light and help people out firsthand.
Just if I could add, so this is the service that's previously been available for Town of Bridgewater residents as part of the Energized Bridgewater program. And the thought is to, as their Energized Bridgewater program comes to an end, they still see value in it. We see value in it, and we thought we'd take the opportunity to cost share. And it's not a new hire. We're reallocating one of our staff because they don't have staff anymore for the position. So it would be a shared expense that we are going to manage. And then the funding, it's probably premature to talk about that. But it's to provide what Bridgewater residents have had, which has assisted them to our residents.
No, thank you for clarifying that. I know personally myself, I'll get calls, especially from seniors who want to replace an old furnace, and I'm not always sure where to send them other than looking at provincial programs. So to have one service, one call, who can work with that person through the process is a real value for our residents, and I'm seeing nods around the table with that.
It's, if I could
Yeah,
just
go
add
ahead.
one final piece on, when council did your strategic priorities work and you refined some of those 5 key areas, when you spoke about climate action, there's a focus on, continued focus on reducing municipal corporate emissions, but then it's also you're wanting to support the community in adapting to the changing climate and improving efficiency and affordability. So this is your planning staff looking at what are our options to try and really bring that affordability, efficiency piece to those residents. So it's not finalized yet, but we're laying the groundwork for that to try and get you to your strategic vision there on how you should be addressing the climate.
Councillor Reinhardt.
Just to clarify on that Energy Navigator, so is that only for individuals, or is there any inclusion of industry or community groups or anything like that?
Yeah, this is a good question. So in the presentation that your manager of climate and sustainability also talked about, like, you know, the potential for like helping community groups. So that Energy Navigator, like, would have contacts at all those different programs, so would be able to help assist, you know, if it's a community hall that wants to, you know, do energy upgrades, we'd be able to do that now. We're under that program, and right now, as councillors probably aware, like, we've been helping a number of fire halls go through and do some energy upgrades to those. So yes, it would be non-residential, as in like community programs as well, or community hall programs for community halls. Sorry.
Another comment from the mayor for the planning department is around the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid and the science behind supporting the 100K investment. And some of the concerns that she wanted brought forward include what future treatment will be required, and given the size of our parkland properties, is this a good investment as opposed to removal of infected trees on an as-needed basis and allow nature to evolve the forest? There may be trees that survive that will be tolerant to the disease, and we begin to foster a disease-resilient, tolerant tree.
Yeah, so for the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid project, so we've done inventories now in all of our parks. Miller, Point Peace Park, and the Mark are the worst infection, or they're infested, and they're the worst. The Mark has somewhere over 4,000 hemlock trees that have been surveyed in there. And like, to treat all those, there's only so much chemical that can be sprayed within a hectare, so each year, so it has to be spread out over a number of years. So it'll probably take like 4 years to treat the trees at the Mark. But the Mark and Miller are our 2 priority areas right now. There are infestations in River Ridge, but it's not as advanced. And there's some other, you know, early signs of the pest in some of the other parks, and then good. Some other parks don't have any at all yet. So we'll continue to monitor those. As far as, if we didn't do action, like the Mark and Miller Point are parks that have trails, and if those trees die, we would have to remove those trees because it would be a hazard to those. I don't have to, I can't quote the price, but my understanding is very expensive to remove some of those larger trees versus if you were to treat.
Final round, looking around the table. Councillor Smith.
I have a question or an ask about the Sherbrooke Lake Water Monitoring Program. I did get some feedback on our approval of this, and I do just want to make sure that we're thinking about the future of having a sustainable water monitoring program that can be replicated if council so chooses. So I guess my question is, will this program be delivered by a nonprofit and an RFP goes out for that? And if so, I would just have an ask to include in that, if possible.
Right, so the intent would be to partner with the previous nonprofit that had worked with us and the volunteers in the community. So that would be Coastal Action. My understanding, if council approved it in this budget, I would need to have further direction if council wanted staff to look at, I thought there was a sense around the room, but I think we would need to have better direction of whether they wanted this to be manifested into a more overall blanket policy for more than just Sherbrooke Lake, for more lakes. But the intent of this year was to replicate the program that was previous because of the data that had been collected to ensure that the baseline was still accurate to do that 3 years later. There was no really discussion after this year. So council would have to have that discussion and direction given to staff around what direction that was to take. So I was just directed to include it in the budget, and hence why it's being presented this evening.
So my question is, I don't, we already had this conversation, we already voted, it's in the budget. I don't really want to, particularly open that up for rehashing. But I do want to ask if we could, if we're partnering with an organization, if part of the project could be recommending in future years how the scope of the project, of the testing, could be changed to be more affordable and more sustainable over time, especially if we're thinking about replicating it later. I'm just trying to think ahead so that, because that testing program was incredibly, I shouldn't say incredibly, but it was very intense. It's not, it tested for a lot of things. So I'm just asking, maybe going forward, if the nonprofit could say, here's recommendations for making that program a bit more sustainable.
That was the wish of council. I could certainly go back and include that in the scope of, for the pricing, because they would need to include that as to do the current, or to replicate what they did 3 years ago, and then to include a report of how we could look futuristic in of the scope of modifying and what we should be testing that would still give us a good baseline. They are the scientists, so I would be relying on their recommendations.
I'm going to look to staff, but I think if we were going to make changes to a program, it wouldn't come up at this time where we're dealing with the operating budget. Do you want to speak to that, Tom?
Yeah, so at this point, we're just planning for this expenditure. If council, and my recollection was that council's motion was to replicate previous testing, not try to plan for future testing. So we would need some pretty clear direction from council if they wanted us to change the nature of the contract that we're entering into, and give us some direction, because it's likely going to increase cost because you're adding an element to a program that we've already got an estimate for that council has approved. So it's not that it can't be done, but we just have to have a separate and independent discussion with council before we go and award. Our procurement policy allows us to go sole source Section 19 awards to nonprofits, so we don't have to go out to the market. We do have the option of using the previous provider, but we want to have a discussion about that before we make that change.
Okay, I'm doing one look around the half circle and I'm not seeing any other hands. So with that in mind, I think we'll conclude our special council meeting. And as reiterated before, this is not the last opportunity that we have for discussion. This was our first round seeing the draft, and give staff an opportunity to take that away, and we'll come back again and have that presented on March 3rd, along with our capital budget. So with that in mind, I'll call this meeting adjourned.